audience. So we are very excited now to welcome our next presenter this afternoon. Mr. Jordi is currently Regional Coordinator of the Chemicals and Pollution Action Program at the UN Environment Latin America and the Caribbean Office. Previously, he had also provided strategic and technical advice to a range of organizations, including governmental authorities, international organizations, and the private sector, mainly in the areas of integrated waste management in the regions of Europe, the Mediterranean, Latin America, and the Caribbean. So to give a balanced perspective, Ronald would have given us a lot of Caribbean insight, but as you know, we are islands in the middle of an ocean, but we aren't alone. We are part of a global community. So, Jordi is going to give us a bit of context about the Caribbean plastic pollution, within like the global scale. Yeah. So I'm handing the floor over to you.
Thank you, Terrell, and hello to everybody. Thank you for this invitation, and I'm very pleased to share some information on the trends and how the international community is addressing plastic pollution, and what are the global options to address plastic pollution that are being analyzed and proposed to be included eventually in a global instrument, in a treaty that would be legally binding, hopefully in the coming years, to tackle this important problem. I'm going to share some slides. I hope that this is already visible for all.
Yes, it is.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So in terms of the why, in summary, this is a concerning issue, and I'm sure that you have already addressed this previously and in the former presentation by Ronald. But at a global scale, we have the evidence. We can say in some way that our society, our global economy is addicted to plastic. And we say that because we observed in the previous decades an exponential growth in plastic production and consumption. We are right now at a level that globally the economy is producing more than 400 million tons per year. And because our model, our linear economy model, that we extract the raw materials, we produce, we use, we consume, and we throw away, we are producing many plastic waste. And also, as we know, and in this region also, we do not have yet those circular systems, those proper waste management facilities everywhere. So it is estimated that the consequence of this plastic leakage to the environment is in the order of 19-23 million tons per year of plastic waste. Also, this plastic pollution comes mainly from land-based sources, but also we also have sea-based sources of plastic pollution to the marine environment, from fisheries, tourism, and other shipping and other sources. But mainly the river in discharges accounts globally as an average for 80% of land-based, of the sources of plastic pollution. As mentioned, this is also a reality in Latin America and the Caribbean, where about 30% of waste as an average is still disposed in improper waste management facilities like open dam sites or its open burn. And this includes about 17,000 tons per day of plastic waste every day in Latin America and the Caribbean. This is the amount of plastic waste that is discharged or exposed or leaked to the environment. As a consequence, and as a continuation of these practices over the last decades, the situation is that plastic pollution is everywhere. it's in all the environmental matrices all across the globe. We can find not only in the ocean, in the surface water, we also find in the soil, in the poles, in the Arctic, in everywhere in the deep sea of the ocean. And not only in all the environmental matrices, but also in our bodies. It's in the form of microplastic. We breathe plastic, we eat plastic, we are drinking plastics, and as a consequence, it's like that we are eating like the equivalent. Some NGO estimated that we are eating like a plastic card, like a credit card. So this is the amount of plastic that every week we are introducing in our body with uncertain consequences. And some action really needs to take place, because the projected trends towards 2050 in a business as usual scenario is that emissions of plastic into the aquatic ecosystems are going to be projected to nearly triple by 2040 without meaningful action. That's why there has been an increased awareness of the magnitude, ubiquity of the problem, and I'm very concerned about these concerning trends. Again, because in just a few years, we have the scientific evidence how microplastics are found in all the parts of our body, including in placentas or in our blood. But not everything is bad news. We have some solutions out there. We recently released a report from UNIP that is named Turning on the Tap. We need to turn off the tap on how to end plastic pollution. And the main conclusion of this analysis, this modeling, is that using the knowledge, the technology, the solutions that we already know there and that have already been tested, we can reduce 80% of plastic pollution by 2040. If we take action. If we do not take action, that will be the amount of plastic waste that will end into the environment will continue to increase massively. But an important message is that for those plastics that are actually not necessarily, that are those that are short-lived products or this over-packaging, this can be that those that are avoidable and even problematic, that are difficult to recycle, this can be reduced at least 30%. So the first message is that we need to reduce the size of the problem. So we need to produce and consume less plastics, and this is possible at least 30%. So with those plastics that are necessarily or that are produced or that are introduced in our economy, in our system, we need to do three things at least to accelerate the reusability of the products. This is something that we have lost in the past many decades ago. I remember that this was something, a regular practice. This is no longer there. Now we need to, again, to think how we make products reusable. How can we design the products that are more reusable and also that are more recyclable? It's difficult to recycle some materials, and particularly in the Caribbean, it's difficult, as possibly Ronald has pointed out, to create economies of scale to facilitate the logistics and the feasibility of recycling. So we also need to have some incidents since the upstream, since the design of the products, in order at least to facilitate, and also from a health perspective, to ensure that the chemical additives that are included in the plastics in response to some of the properties that we are looking for the plastics are also not harmful, less toxic, or non-toxic. And in that way, the third market shift that we are promoting through these conclusions of the report is that we also need to focus on how to reorient, diversify the market for sustainable and safe plastic alternatives. Maybe for some products we can produce with a different biodegradable material, but of course with a proper analysis of what are we meaning about biodegradability. So this really needs to be a sustainable alternative, but there is also room for intervention over there. And this also has an economic language. We did also estimated that shifting to this circular economy, because we are increasing the efficiency of our overall economic system, but particularly, and this is a conservative estimate, we are avoiding the social and the environmental costs that the public sector and the taxpayers are contributing, and not the upstream and the pollution at source. So we are saving a massive amount of resources by 2040 if we move towards this circular economy approach. Just to conclude, this transition to this new model, the new circular economy of plastics, also needs to be a just transition. We know that there are workers, that there are people involved also in recycling, that there are people involved in the plastics economy. So we need to also to take that into consideration, but at the same time to consider the opportunities. In the report, also we identified that by 2040 we could produce, we could create 700,000 new jobs at the global level. So these are an important message. And how we can move forward with this? Well, all these incentives, all these policies needs to be integrated through regulatory and policy actions and industry actions across the plastics life cycle. This is a very important message. Of course, we need to clean up the environment. Of course, we need to stop the pollution from the rivers flowing into the ecosystems, but we need to look at the origin, at source. What are the upstream solutions? We need to design everything in a different way and take action all across the life cycle of plastic. So ending plastic pollution is within reach, but action is really needed. And at global level, we are taking steps. The international community finally took a decision last year at this UN Environmental Assembly, where all the member states joined together to take decisions on the environmental agenda. And last year, there was a very important decision, a resolution to end plastic pollution. With this approach, with an ending life cycle of plastics, but to create a new legally binding instrument at international level that should be agreed by 2024. So the negotiations between all the countries have already started, and by next year, this is quite an ambitious goal, a challenge, but all countries we expect that have agreed into a new global treaty addressing plastic pollutions by 2024. As mentioned, the process has already been kicked off. 2 meetings of this international negotiating committee already took place last year in Uruguay. Last month, the second meeting took place in Paris, in France. And this year, we will have another meeting in Kenya, and 2 additional meetings will take place next year. And hopefully, by the end of next year, we will shape a new global agreement to end plastic pollution. Of course, in parallel, it doesn't mean that we need to wait for the member states to reach an agreement and then to ratify and take action. Many countries in the region, particularly in the Caribbean, have taken action over the last years to take, for instance, to address the issue of single-use plastics. Of course, many lessons have been learned of doing that, but in the region, for instance, we have already identified that in at least 27 countries, some regulatory and policy action have already been conducted to address single-use plastics, for instance, plastic bags at national level or subnational level. So action is taking place, and this needs to be, of course, accelerated and enhanced. But all in all, this is where we are with the global perspectives. Looking forward to have a positive outcome of these international negotiations, that afterwards this will need to be tailored to the specific circumstances. And that's why it's important that Caribbean countries are have a very active voice in these negotiations, because the Caribbean, as we all know, have very specific situations, the seats that will need to be considered by any global agreement. So thank you very much again for this invitation, and happy to continue the dialogue with all of you. Thank you.